Committee SPRC subgroup meeting for the Shirlington House project. We will be holding a hybrid public meeting which enables remote electronic participation as legally authorized by the Code of Virginia through the Planning Commission's electronic meeting policy adopted on July 7th, 2022. Members of the SPRC subgroup for the Shirlington House project are participating both here in person and virtually through electronic means. At this time, I'd like to orient everyone to our hybrid environment and cover a few specifics about how tonight's meeting will run. Members of the public may attend the meeting here in person or electronically by using the Microsoft Teams link provided on the SPRC webpage, the project webpage, the county's events calendar, and the email notifications sent to SPRC email subscribers. Additionally, there is a dial-in phone option for those who wish to use it. For our subgroup members joining virtually, if anyone loses internet connectivity during today's meeting, please reconnect with us by phone. Please keep your phones and devices muted until you are called upon. Turn off sound to any other devices around you to minimize interference. For our virtual attendees using Microsoft Teams, please turn off your video feed. I will address when it is appropriate. That's all right. Just making sure everyone's still listening. For SPRC members who need technical assistance and for members of the public to add their names to the list for public comment, which will be taken at the end of the meeting. The Teams chat should not be used for discussion. Those who are planning to provide public comment will still need to do so at the end of the meeting, as the chat will not serve as that opportunity. All public comments must be shared verbally for the record during the assigned public comment period. If subgroup members participating virtually wish to be recognized to speak on an item during the course of the meeting, please turn on your video feed and raise the virtual hand in Teams. I will monitor the video feeds that are on as an indicator of who would like to speak. If subgroup members are participating by phone today without the video option, please announce your name and group you are representing now, and I will verbally check in to see if you wish to be recognized, as you do not have the video feed option. For our members of the public who would like to provide feedback and comment, you will be called on to speak at the end of the meeting. Will be allotted 2 to 3 minutes to speak on tonight's agenda items. The speaking time allotted will depend on the number of speakers we have this evening. If you wish to speak, please enter your name in the meeting chat for virtual attendees or provide staff with your name if in person, and you will be added to the speakers list. Lastly, this is a public forum. Today's meeting will be recorded and posted to the county website. All information associated with today's meeting, whether written or spoken, is subject to Freedom of Information Act requirements. Just as a starter, does everybody know that today actually marks Ellen Bozeman's 100th birthday? This building is named after her. If you don't know that much about her, I invite you. The library is doing a special thing on her, so bless you. So take advantage of learning about all the things that she did. Another thing I just want to mention, I've been doing this at the beginning of the SPRCs I've been chairing this year. We do live in stressful times. It is important that everyone's comments are heard tonight and nobody treats anyone anything less than respectfully. I do want to keep the meeting civil. Please, thank you. It's very much appreciated, and that way we can have a much better conversation. Please do not make me give you an adult time out. And having said that, let's go around the table for introductions. We'll start with you.
I'm a CPHD, Emma Martin, and I'm just here helping out.
Oh, should we go? Well, let's go back. Oh,
Go ahead.
yes.
Okay. Hi, I'm Eva Helm. I'm with KG Architecture and with the Architects on the Budget.
Okay, we'll get back to you in a minute.
Hi, everyone. I'm Matt Allman with Venable Land Use Council.
Michael Eastwood with Sell Properties, owner applicant.
Melissa Ben on Arlington's Climate Change and Energy Commission.
David Health, Forestry and Natural Resources.
Mike Kelly, Planning Commission.
Sergio Viracochea, Principal Planner for DES.
Peter Schultz, Principal Planner for CPHD Planning Division.
And the, let's go back here and then we'll go online.
I'm Mike Warkowski. I'm with Walton Associates with Traffic and Transportation Engineers.
Karen White with Walter Phillips, a civil engineer.
Manoj Devaya with KGD Architecture, we're architects.
Mike Barola with Venable LLP.
Danny Everett with Park Rodriguez, landscape architect.
Will Chadwick with Snell Properties, owner applicant.
And then online, we
We have someone with their hand raised, Ryan Beck. Is that a member of the applicant team? They might have a question.
okay. Is that a member of the applicant team? We don't have this person on the roster for being at the table.
Let's see what they're-
Yeah, I can see.
Also, maybe asking us to speak up too.
Oh,
Microphones are well.
Are we
above us,
not
above
talking
us.
loud enough? Hopefully everybody there can hear us.
They should be able to unmute now too. I've
Okay.
got a question.
Is there a question before we continue with the rest of the introductions? I see, Arby, is that Rob?
Ryan Beck.
Ryan.
Right, Beck, okay. Mr. Beck, do you have a question before we start?
Yes, sorry, this is Jennifer Davies and I'm with the Fairlington Civic
Oh.
Association, and I tried to say in the chat, my son used Teams earlier today and I don't know how to change it once the, I don't know, it's not like
All right,
Zoom where you.
So you're Jennifer, okay.
Yeah, but you can't, how in Teams, unlike Zoom, can you rename it?
Wonderful. That might be a question for another time. I don't know.
Welcome,
So,
Jennifer,
anyway.
sorry that I called you he.
Yeah, I tried to put it in the chat and I don't know how to rename it anyway. So
It's
I'm
fine,
with
we'll
Fairlington
know
Civic.
now who you really are, so we appreciate it.
Yeah.
Who else do we have online who is a member of the
We've got table. Eric Goodman.
Eric, want to,
Pedestrian advisories.
okay, so he's back.
And Nelson.
Pam Van Hine is at the
Yes, she's
table
at
and
the
she's
table. Thank you.
representing us.
And we also have,
Nelson Dimter.
Nelson, do you want to introduce yourself?
Yep. Hi, everyone. I'm Nelson Dimter. I'm on Park and Recreation Commission.
Alex Rowe.
And Alex? Yeah, Alex, I believe you are a backup to, yes, to Melissa.
Correct. Yes, Alex Rowe. Hi.
Wonderful. Okay, great. Thank you. So we don't have anybody else, correct? All right. Okay, so having said that, why don't we go ahead and turn this over to staff?
Okay, this is the SPRC meeting, just for everybody's awareness, for the Shirlington House new site plan. That is the only application that's being considered a new site plan. Tonight's agenda is going to be slightly different because of the canceled SPRC from the previous night, difficulty rescheduling, but also the relatively small scale of this application. We're hopeful to try to get this done through in one evening. However, if we do want the conversation to be thorough as possible, and if necessary, we can schedule a second SPRC. But we think the project is small enough that we might be able to get this done by 9-ish tonight. But again, if you want to make sure that all the items, are aired sufficiently. So we're going to divide it into two halves. I'm going to do a brief presentation on discussion topics 1 through 3. We'll take a break and then reconvene staff and applicant presentations on the items 4 through 7. So I'm going to do the staff presentation for the land use and density, site design and layout, and building height, form, and architecture. And then the applicant will launch into their presentation. And I will try to keep mine to mostly background information to make it as brief as possible. Just so we're all familiar, the site location is in Shirlington. It's located in the Fairlington Civic Association boundary area, though it is neighboring the Shirlington PDSP area. It's a 10-story apartment building built around 1963 with over 400 units, so considerably sized, and it has surface and parking garage parking. And briefly, existing conditions showing the above ground parking garage. It was built by right, so it didn't have site plan, architectural control, or the usual amenities that we expect through site plans like undergrounded utilities and wider sidewalks and street trees. So it met the minimum requirements for the zoning for the day and the engineering requirements. So the applicant is asking for a site plan to build new units. The existing building is going to stay the same. The garage is going to stay. The applicant wants to build one building of 59 units and 7 sort of, we're trying to figure out how to call them duplex, 2-unit side by side, so maybe 4-plex apartments that will go in front of the garage and kind of mask the garage. The applicant will go into further, I will not go into huge detail about this, but it is below the zoning requirements for height. The parking, it actually does meet the parking requirements of the zoning ordinance, although there are more compact parking spaces than normally that is an existing condition. So they're asking for a modification to sort of bring that existing condition, sort of bring it up. With a modification, we just kind of acknowledge that those compact spaces are there. Although they will, as they say, restripe some of the surface parking spaces to make more of them full-size parking spaces. They are applying, I want the SPRC to know that the reason this is a site plan is they're applying through a provision in our zoning ordinance that for on-site affordable housing and other amenities, they are asking for, so right now they are at their maximum density for the RA 615 zoning district. So basically all the 79 new units are earned through the provision of on-site affordable housing and any other amenities that we might identify. Mostly it's going to be on-site affordable housing. The policy guidance we have here, this area is not within the Shirlington phase development site plan area, so it is not under any of the planning documents we have for Shirlington. The only really specific, it is within the housing conservation district. And so the county board adopted a policy framework. And what that is actually to preserve MARC units up to 80% AMI and provide committed affordable housing. The idea is also to preserve the existing and encourage infill development. While ensuring that projects are compatible to their surroundings and that new density can be supported by the transportation infrastructure and transit. So encourages also creation of underrepresented housing forms. So this is a policy that the county board adopted that mainly will be analyzing this through. There's also the zoning regulations, the RA 615 zoning district. That's an apartment zoning district, doesn't allow mixed use. Except under extremely limited circumstances. So this is going to be purely residential development. And then there's the general land use plan, which shows what our future plan for the area. And again, that's apartments. We had online engagement, 130 respondents, including many people who sounded like we didn't have a specific category that said existing apartment residents, but many of them sounded like reading their comments. Most people said they didn't want to add density. They cited traffic and schools in that area. Concern about loss of street parking. And I think as we've gone through this process, the developer and staff are working on that about preserving as much street parking as possible. And also shadows or loss of views from the existing building. I will say, while staff understands that's a concern of existing residents, loss of views from existing building isn't something that legally staff can analyze or affecting somebody's view. But that is something obviously that the developer could address to make existing residents happy if that is, they choose to do so. I'm just going to quickly go through this. These are just the map of the zoning and the general land use plan. Again, all apartments, housing conservation district. Land use and density is permitted, multifamily. It will, the existing density actually does exceed the RA 615 regulations. And the reason for that is, just to give you some background, the definition of the density in RA 615 changed since the 1960s, plus some land was taken for widening I-395. So that's why, and in fact, actually in 1981, not to get too far into the future, the BZA, basically approved a variance that permitted the existing density because of that, but it met the zoning regulations in 1963. And that's why the additional density that they're asking for here is under this 1237A, which the applicant does have to provide committed on-site affordable units as part of their proposal. Site design and layout, they'll show you more of this. Those of you who are on the walking tour saw that the 7-story building is going to be the easternmost side of the site, closest to Shirlington. The 4-story townhouses are going to be lining the existing garage on 31st Street South. Again, they will show you most of this. The lobby is at the extreme corner of 31st Street. In the alley, there's going to be a new loading dock for the existing building that will come off of 31st Street. And here's the paired townhouses. So there's one at the far western end that's just 2 units. So these pairs are actually 4 units. And the developer will walk you through the architecture more generally contemporary. The idea was to try to be compatible with the existing building's vocabulary of architecture. And then this is where I'm going to end. We'll talk about parking in the second half of the meeting.
Thank you. So Matt, are you giving the staff presentation?
Yes.
Great, thank you.
And for anyone in the room, we have hard copies of the presentation. If you want to grab one and take notes for your use. But thanks again, everyone. Again, my name is Matt Allman with Venable, and I'm here at the table with Michael Eastwood from Snell and Ava Hill, KGD Architecture. We've got the whole brain trust behind me to help answer questions. You can see our agenda for the night is a packed one. So in the interest of efficiency, I'm going to just handle the entire slideshow and be as expedient as I can, and then rely on the team to help answer any questions that come up. So here you see the existing conditions. The property actually consists of 2 parcels, one large parcel to the north, smaller undeveloped parcel to the south. It's sandwiched between the Park Shirlington development to the west and the Citizen development to the north and east. It's about a block away from the Shirlington Transit Depot. And then on the south and easterly frontage, it borders 31st Street and then ultimately the highway on the other side of the landscape zone. Again, it's a by right building constructed in the 60s, 436 units, 567 parking spaces. And as Peter alluded to, it's zoned RA 615, and we're not proposing to change the zoning with this application. Here's our rendered site plan showing how the infill units relate to the site. And I'll kind of move, left to right and hit a few points, but we'll talk a lot about this entrance here and this curb bump out that's proposed. It has implications for a lot of different aspects of the project. You see the liner units as you move up 31st Street, helping screen views of that garage. And then ultimately the multifamily building here at the northeast corner. That multifamily building is 7 stories, and the liner buildings are 4 stories each. We have a slide a bit later that shows how it looks in relation to one another, because for anyone who's been out there, it's quite a slope. So not all stories are on the same level. And again, it's 100% residential project, no retail, no commercial use. This slide is more just for frame of reference for anyone who wants to come back and learn a bit more about the unit mix and the sizes. I certainly won't go through every data point on the screen, other than just to call out the high number of 2 and 3 bedroom units, 13 2-bed, 18 3-bedroom units. That's something unique that we're able to accomplish here with the liner units. It's kind of a unique typology that we don't get to do in every site plan project. So it's a real benefit. It makes this project a little special and a little bit different from what we sometimes do in the commercial corridors. In terms of the parking, as Peter mentioned, we're proposing to maintain the existing garage in its current condition, just let the new residents utilize it. The garage is so overbuilt that in the current condition and in the future condition, we still exceed the minimum by right requirement, which again, it's also kind of unusual. Normally coming to the SPRC and the Planning Commission asking for a reduction, but in this instance, we don't actually need one. This is the existing site circulation pattern, and I'll again just sort of work left to right. You have a primary vehicular entrance here at the southwest corner of the site. This is where vehicles would come to get to the main entrance, or a pedestrian might walk to get up to the main entrance. This is also where trash and loading and other service vehicles would access the site. And there's a service area kind of tucked back up the hill behind this wing of the building. Moving down 31st Street, there's a bus stop on either side of 31st and a crosswalk roughly in between. There are two more vehicular entrances into the garage, and they actually take you right into each one at different level of the garage because the slope is so extreme that this entrance is to the G1 level, and by the time you get down here, you're actually at the G2 level of the garage. There's street parking on either side of the street. On the north side of 31st, it is not zone regulated, not metered. It's just open for anyone. On the south side of the street, it's metered, and actually the metering continues all the way up the slide and really off the slide here, all the way up to the bus depot. At the northeast corner of the site, there is a sidewalk that traverses from one of the secondary building access points all the way down the public sidewalk. We'll show you how that's being reconfigured in the proposed condition, just coming up on the next slide. There's also a few entry points down into the garage from that upper deck level. This is the proposed pedestrian circulation. Again, moving left to right, some of the improvements that we'll call out are a narrowed entrance here at that main site driveway, which cuts down on the pedestrian crossing distance, provides better safety for anyone walking along 31st Street. Shifting the crosswalk location slightly, and the reason we do that is to shift the bus station down, make sure that it's not interfering with the proposed liner units, and also make sure that it's meeting 2025 design standards, which are a little more generous than what's out there today. Similarly, tweaking the location of the bus stop on the south side of 31st Street. The liner units themselves will each have individual stoop entrances where the tenants can walk in directly off the sidewalk, which creates a little bit of interchange with the pedestrian realm and some visual activity. But the other thing that's happening on 31st is adding new pedestrian and, as you'll see, bike access in the same zone as the vehicular garage entrances. So taking what today is just a vehicular entrance and now making it a bit more multimodal. Going to the other corner of the site, you can see the lobby entrance directly off 31st for the multifamily building. That's straight in off the sidewalk. And here you see that reconfigured sidewalk that I mentioned to you a moment ago. Whereas before it just sort of cut diagonally down the hill. Now it hugs the side of the property. It provides access both to the existing building and the new building. This is vehicular circulation in the proposed condition. Not a ton of change with vehicular circulation. You still have your primary vehicle access points here, albeit narrowed and designed, to 2025 standard. Still have the garage entrances to the G1 and G2. Still have street parking on the south side of the street, the metered parking. The street parking on the north side of the street is actually proposed to be removed, which is a little bit of a change from where we started the project to where we are now. And I'll get a little bit more into that in future slides, but I want to put that on everyone's radar. And finally, the proposed loading entrance to the new multifamily building. This slide is busy. This is the bike circulation. The existing garage has bike rooms in it today, but in order to accommodate the new tenants, they need to be expanded, and in some instances, we need to add additional bike parking. So on the top side of this image, you can see in the light blue, the existing spaces, the dark blue is the new ones, and then just sort of roughly how you might get to these spaces once you're in the garage. On the bottom side is a little more public facing. The thick Dashed blue line is a new 5-foot bike lane that we propose to take the place of the street parking on that side of 31st Street. And then, as I mentioned, new bike entrances here sort of co-located with the G1 and G2 vehicular entrances. We also have bike racks out in front of the buildings for visitor bike parking. This is the existing street section. And of course, these sections vary a little bit depending on where you are on the site. So this is just a snapshot. But you could see this is, I guess, looking southwest down 31st Street. You have a 4-foot sidewalk, parking lane, 2 travel lanes of varying width, but generally pretty wide travel lanes, and then a parking lane. You have a 4-foot sidewalk, or 4.5 feet, pardon me, and then pretty significant topography up to the garage. And depending on where you are, there's either a little bit of garage is exposed or really a lot of garage is exposed. This is the proposed street and sidewalk section. Same viewpoint, but we're going to show you a couple different cuts down 31st Street. This one is, I guess, at the northeast side of the multifamily building. So you still have the sidewalk on the opposite side of 31st, still have the parking lane, 2 travel lanes, but those are narrowed somewhat. So these go down to about 11 or 12 feet, depending on where you are, in the site. New 5-foot bike lane, new 5-foot tree pit and landscape zone, 6-foot clear sidewalk, and then you have a door yard or a front entry yard, providing a little bit of buffer between the clear sidewalk and the front door to the multifamily building. A similar view here, just moving a little bit further to the interior of the site, where you can see one of the liner units. Again, that's your 5-foot bike lane, same tree pit, standard clear sidewalk width, a little bit of a shy zone and some bio-retention planters to help green up that transition from the sidewalk to the liner units. And then you can see how the liner units actually screen the garage behind it. Last one, this is actually a snapshot between the 2 liner units. We have one area where there are a lot of existing utilities and a lot of existing infrastructure that really couldn't be relocated without interrupting service to the main building. So the goal in these areas is to green them up, landscape them, make them look as nice as we can. So you see one of those landscape pockets here. Here's the comparative height view that I mentioned to you a few minutes ago. You can kind of get a sense of how the site slopes down towards the new multifamily building. And this puts the new buildings into context with the existing building in the background. The floor plan for the multifamily building. Again, you see the new loading entrance, you see the entrance off the sidewalk directly into the lobby. Actually are some residential units here on this frontage, ground floor, with also service and other back of house uses on this floor. This is more of a typical floor that you would see in the multifamily building. Here you can see the architecture. This is looking here at the lobby entrance from the vantage point of 31st Street. And the goal with the architecture was to employ use of metal paneling and cementitious materials and brick in sort of a warmer earth tone color palette. The goal is to complement the existing building and play off of it without directly matching it and making it too on the nose with the architecture. There's also a lot of playfulness with recessing balconies and depth and different changes in plane. Here you see the footprints of the liner buildings along 31st Street. See that they have individual stoop entrances right off the sidewalk. And here's that landscape pocket that we mentioned a moment ago. Zooming in just a bit to give a sense of proportion. Roughly speaking, the units are about 16.5 feet in depth, right? And that leaves space for about a 5-foot door yard, shy zone, and the stoop before you we get to the clear sidewalk. So here's a rendering of what that might look like, just to provide a little bit of a buffer so it's not right on the clear sidewalk. And on the bottom, we just have a few precedent images of similar development elsewhere in Arlington. The architecture of the liner buildings is pretty similar to that for the multifamily in terms of the materiality, color palette. But here, there's similarly changes in depth to provide some shadow effects, changes in the cornicing, just to provide a little variation and give it sort of a townhouse feel, make it look interesting. This image shows that landscape pocket again, and we show this one not so much for landscape purposes in this segment of the presentation, but more for the materiality of this garage screening. Today, it's kind of a white, I don't even know what you call it, sort of a stucco almost. And the proposal is to affix some metal paneling to create more of architectural harmony with the liner buildings. The colors more similar, the materiality is more similar, and just provide a higher quality of screening for the existing garage. And I believe that's it for part one of the presentation. So, thank you.
Thank you. So before we start the discussion, are there any clarifying questions on those three topics for either staff or the applicant or both? Okay, so I see Jennifer, you've raised your hand. Oh, go ahead.
Yeah, I'm sorry, because I am taking notes. And I think what drew my attention was the narrowing of 31st Street going up and down, if I understood that correctly, but I didn't quite get the scale of it. And I, as someone who uses that regularly, I know it's already sometimes tight when you have city buses going up and down at the same time, that you have to almost pull off to the side. So I think I'm just sort of trying to get a sense of how narrow that might look like.
Before Matt answers, are you talking when you're in your car?
Yes.
Okay.
So with it, let's say a city bus is coming down towards Shirlington, you're making your way up. It already sort of feels somewhat tight, depending on how people are parked on either side. So I'm just, as a question of narrowing what that's like. Living in Shirlington, that's a reality all the time. We have to pull off to the side because it's too narrow.
Any response, Matt?
Sure. So I'll take a first response, and then I may have Karen from our civil engineering team just supplement. But I think today, with 2 travel lanes and 2 parking lanes, that may be what's creating some of the tightness at different points. By eliminating one of the parking lane in favor of a bike lane, it does free up some room to rebalance things and still keep it comfortable. So I think that the travel lanes are at least 11 or 11.5 feet, and in some instances maybe a bit wider, which would be pretty typical for this road segment, this volume of traffic. And it is designed to accommodate that bus traffic as well. So
okay, so I didn't hear.
Go ahead.
Wanted to make sure that I heard narrowing of 31st travel lanes.
Yeah.
I think you meant they're narrowing the entrance.
No, the lanes are narrowing because one is 20
Okay,
foot wide.
right.
Yeah, Karen can.
So if you're familiar, I'm sure you're familiar, so on the project side, there's an area where the curb bumps in and there's parking. If you're familiar with that, so that physical curb is moving away from the project, and that curb is getting narrower, but it's aligning with the rest of the curb along that road. So there are sections that are just being made narrow, we'll say, to align with the overall general curb to curb, which will remain the same.
Does that help, Jennifer?
Sure. Okay. So yep. Thank you.
Awesome. Are there any other clarifying questions? Yes, Pam.
2, Sharge. The new sidewalk by the alley, and you said it goes up to the existing building?
Mm-hmm.
Isn't that a steep slope?
It is, but let me pull up the slide.
And are you
Real
ramping, providing stairs, or what?
Pardon me. And I will get to that slide. And I do want the design team to help me out so I don't mischaracterize it. But I believe that the slopes Right, the question was about this segment of sidewalk here, and there's a new connection point to the new multifamily building as well as the existing building here. Basically, how do you get up to the existing building?
Right.
Right. I'm looking to my design team to help me out. I know we've looked at this and,
There is the new stairwell that
right,
say the walkway that's parallel to that alley up to the.
Yeah.
It's just redesigned from what today it was really curved. It's just gonna come straight up.
And my other question is about the bike lane. Is there any protection for it? Or it's just gonna be a line?
It's just a line.
yeah.
Too bad.
I'll note just globally, I think this applies to what we've seen and what we will see in the second part of the presentation. The streetscape is still a bit of a work in progress. It's changed a lot from what we filed initially, and it's not been fully engineered, fully reviewed by staff to this point. So we kind of know the direction we're heading with it, but there is still some work to be done.
Thank you.
And if I hear no more, a qualifying question, we have, hold on a minute. Yes, look. Yes. My brain's in the output, it's just walked out of the room. PS. Who's PS? Are they on the? Are they on the SPRC?
Patty Shen.
Okay, no, okay. Ms. Shen, you will have to wait, if you haven't already done so, the discussion right now is in front of the SPRC members. We do want to hear your comments, so if you haven't already done so, if you can hold your questions and keep them into comments, that we will call on folks to do public comment at the end, and you can put your name in the chat box, so that we can call on you then. So. All right, so having said that, let's move now to the discussion, and we will start with land use and density. Any comments, questions? No. What's that? I'm confused.
I just chatted to see if she's got a technical support question.
Gotcha.
Okay, great.
You'll let me know if.
Yeah.
Okay, great. So I'm not seeing anything for land use and density. Site design and layout. Anybody have anything for site design and layout?
That she's confused because there was a question asked.
Is she a member of the SPRC?
Committee or.
Yeah, I see her name. All right, and having not gotten any questions there, let's move on to building height, form, and architecture. Okay. I do just want a couple comments myself.
Oh, Jennifer.
Oh, Jennifer. Yeah, Jennifer, go ahead.
Again, apologizing that it says Ryan Beck all the time. I just want to make sure that I understood everything, because I know when we went through with Park Shirlington, some of the massing and the scaling were big concerns for our community. That the new building that is being built is, because it's so much lower down the hill, will look sort of from eyesight. It's not really compromising the sight lines, or is that how I understood it correctly? Because it's being built at a lower, and I'm sorry, I'm not as familiar as I was with all of this, but because being built lower down from the top of the hill, you're not going to see it. Right.
I've asked Matt to pull that slide up again so that you can get a better frame for this.
I guess the massing, is that the correct
Yeah.
term? There you go.
Yeah.
That's okay.
Yeah, so you can see the current building in behind there to give you an idea.
Yeah. Okay. That was the visual that I sort of needed, and then thinking further up the hill. And I'm assuming that those the concerns that were raised from the Park Shirlington residents were the ones that maybe were tucked reside, or the ones behind the newer build, right? That was their concern. The shadows or the blocked views.
Yeah.
Yes, I guess
believe
with the
that's
block
correct.
views, yes.
Okay, thank you.
Okay. I just have a couple comments, not sure of the three where they go, but it's nice to see the 3 bedrooms. Thank you for that. That's always a hard one for us to get. And, you did, and we're gonna get to this later, but you did mention the landscape pocket. Hopefully that will be native.
Yeah.
Okay, great, thank you. All right. So, oh yeah, Jim.
For the landscape pocket, and maybe landscaping really is in the second half.
It is kind of, but that's.
Because, yeah, I was wondering with that screen, which looks good, but could it also be a trellis that plants could climb up, be more biophilic?
Good question.
I think the idea behind that, we're still relying on a little bit of ventilation. So the idea was to have the landscape in front, keep the plants off.
Okay, so I guess we can move on to part 2. Does anyone need a stretch break? Get up, stand up, do anything, or you just want to kind of power on through? Got power on through? Okay, so we'll just power on through.
Just clarify, Patty Chair wanted to sign up for public comment.
Very good. Okay, very good. So that
Yeah,
was.
we'll make sure we'll have time for public
Yes,
comment.
we
at the
definitely
end
will
of
get
the,
to you.
Meeting for, thank you. Yes.
So we're going to go to part 2 here, and we will hear from staff
Yeah,
shortly
just
on parking and loading, transportation, and the rest of our agenda tonight.
Let me just.
No worries.
Hopefully how it shows my. Okay, that's, I don't want to show my notes again.
There you go.
Just to refresh everybody, the agenda. So we're actually at the halfway point of staff presentation on items 4 through 7. I'm going to try to keep it short. Again, the applicant, feel free to take the time you need. And again, everybody should feel like we have sufficient discussion. We're going to pick that up with a discussion of the on-site parking and transportation, open space and landscaping, and that ties in with the green building and sustainability that the developer is proposing, and site features and amenities. Which comes with the site plan development, including discussion of on-site affordable housing. Then we will have a public comment and then wrap up from tonight's meeting. All right, here we go. There are 567 parking spaces, which actually exceeds what the zoning, even in 1963, that was more than what the zoning ordinance required. So that's over 100 spaces more than the zoning ordinance required in 1963 and requires even today. If the zoning ordinance requires 1.125 parking spaces per dwelling unit for the first 200 plus 1 unit over. Anyways, the upshot is that they are not adding new parking spaces. However, even with adding 79 new dwelling units, they're still under the zoning ordinance requirement for parking spaces. I know that we got from feedback that there was perceived lack of parking on the site. If it meets the zoning ordinance, as staff, we don't have the ability to ask for more. In fact, generally, we try to right size the parking to match demand, and the developer is providing what the zoning ordinance requires. To show the site access, did you want to? Sure. Yes, my colleague Sergio from the DES.
I'll speak on the proposed parking plan. So the applicant proposes to retain and continue using the existing on-site garage, as Matt said, which currently serves the Shirlington House residents. Access to the garage will remain off of 31st Street South, with 1 curb cut leading to the surface lot and 2 other curb cuts that lead to garage levels 1 and 2. To support new pedestrian entrances at the garage, which are not currently in place, the applicant is proposing to remove parking spaces from the existing supply. I believe it's 2 spaces. With the addition of new residential units, the overall parking ratio would shift to 1.11 spaces per unit. The plan also includes new bicycle parking consisting of 37 new bike spaces, 31 secure indoor spaces, and 6 on-street spaces. In regards to on-street parking, I think Matt gave us a glimpse of some of the changes, but speaking of what was submitted to the county in terms of plans, the applicant is proposing to limit on-street parking to the north side of 31st Street South. Figures on the bottom right reflect the parking counts under that condition on the north side only. During online engagement and discussions with county staff, there was strong recommendations to maximize parking supply through the design. And like I said, staff has not yet received updated plans, and the applicant will share any revisions in response to some of these comments in the next portion of the presentation. To summarize some of what the applicant and Matt and Peter have said, with the new dwelling units being proposed, the parking supply will continue to meet and exceed zoning requirements, and also standard transportation demand management strategies are also being applied to the site plan project. In terms of 31st Street South, the applicant proposes to standardize the street width to 36 feet along the building frontages. The current width varies between 36 and 46 feet. Travel lanes are proposed to be adjusted, and some of them will still continue to exceed county recommended widths, depending on the final parking layout. The proposed streetscape on the north side includes a 5-foot wide landscape zone, also a 6-foot wide sidewalk. Existing curb cuts to the garage are proposed to be converted to county standard driveway aprons. And again, while official plans haven't been submitted to the county, the applicant will provide us probably a glimpse on what they've updated so far in the next presentation.
With regard to open space and landscaping, again, the zoning ordinance requirement is a maximum 56%, and lot coverage is the footprint of any buildings and driving surfaces, so driveways and parking. Right now, 49% lot coverage is proposed. I should note that in this application, while yes, trees are being cut down in front of the parking garage, those are largely ornamental and non-native trees. Canopy trees that meet our county standards for resiliency and for generally Virginia native plantings will be provided on this site to shade the public sidewalk. And the applicant's going to show you more about the on-site landscaping. With regard to the green building and sustainability, they are requesting bonus density at the 0.25 FAR level. What that is that we have a green building incentive program, which if they qualify at LEED Gold and they got a couple Arlington specific credits, they can earn a 0.25 FAR additional density. That's additional square footage that they need to build. That will apply to the new building only, although we would like staff would like the applicant to examine if there's anything they can do in the existing building. We know the existing building was built in the 60s, and I'm sure there's, would not want to disrupt people who live there with major things, but are there some existing things they can do to make the existing building more efficient? And they currently have some electric charging stations already on site. Generally, we do like to see EV charging stations and EV-ready parking spaces available with new developments like these. Site features and amenities, they are asking for additional density, as I said at the beginning of the meeting, under a provision of the zoning ordinance that requires much of that additional density to be in affordable housing, committed affordable housing on site, generally 60% of the average area median income, and affordable for a term of at least 30 years. They're also asking for LEED Gold and community priority credits, as stated before. We're still negotiating with the applicant as to how many affordable units they need to provide us and what bedroom configurations. We will, by the time that this goes to any like housing commission, and the planning commission in the future. Other amenities of this, we're getting an improved streetscape, especially an ADA compliant one. If not underground utilities on site, then at least a contribution to the underground utility fund. We'll get, as Sergio stated before, transportation demand management on the new building, where the residents of the new building will be required to have, will be given preloaded Metro cards or a car share membership when they sign up as new residents, and other the benefits that we get with site plan development, which is more limited construction hours. As well as a community meeting that would be required before any construction begins. That's something normally by right development doesn't have. That's what, as part of the site plan process, the developer has to agree to. So to show about the public process and schedule, this is, we might have one site plan review committee meeting. That's not the only time for comment. There will be commissions, including Housing Commission, Transportation Commission, and Planning Commission. And then eventually the county board actually needs to hold a public hearing for this project. We don't, it probably will be before the August break for the various meetings, but we don't have specific dates. But please follow the website that we have linked here, and you can always talk to me or Sergio or Ms. Begley, and we will make sure that on the website, the upcoming public hearings, as well as a recording of tonight's meeting and minutes will be posted as soon as we know about them. Thank you.
Thank you. Pat? Oops.
Okay. So we'll start with parking before we get to open space. On the top part of the slide here is some data that the owner has produced relative to the existing parking utilization. So they have a pretty good handle on how many spots are open at any given point in time, and they show roughly 76% utilization in the garage. And that means there's a lot of unused vacant parking sitting in there. And that's something that we see very typically in these older by right 1960s buildings. They're just overparked. In terms of the proposal to utilize that parking for the new residents, as Peter explained, even adding the new units to the site still exceeds the minimum by right parking requirement. So we've got a reduced parking ratio down to 1.11 in the aggregate, but actually it's not even so much a modification because we still have a little bit of surplus versus what's required. We are proposing a modification to utilize the existing spaces as is, even though we know that many of them don't meet 2025 requirements for dimensions and layout. That's also fairly common when we're dealing with wedging a newer development into an older existing garage. Perhaps more so in Crystal City or Roslyn, but it's something that the county sees from time to time. To shift to street parking momentarily, talk about kind of where we started with the 4.1 filing, or I should say even further back, what's out there today, what we filed, and then where we are now, current proposal, because there has been some movement on this particular aspect of the design. So currently, as you know, there's parking on either side of the street, roughly 51 spaces, touch or approximately touch the property line. In the initial filing, the proposal was to maintain the street parking here on the north side of the street and eliminate the street parking on the south side of the street. That would have been a loss of approximately 32 spaces. And what we heard very clearly from staff and from the comments in the online engagement and discussions with the Civic Association is that folks were a little wary of losing all that street parking. And could we go back and look at ways to maybe balance that out a little better? So that's what we've done. So we've been working on sort of in the background. And the current design, which is here on the screen, shows maintaining that street parking now on the south side with just the removal of one space here, which is needed to accommodate the larger bus stop. but then eliminating the street parking on the north side in favor of the new 5-foot bike lane. So there's still a loss, but that delta is not quite as great. You know, we're looking at losing approximately 18 spaces as opposed to approximately 32. We had our transportation consultant go out and do a little rough survey of utilization of that street parking. And they actually surveyed even, you know, not just in front of the site, but a bit further up the block towards the transit station. They took a slightly wider lens on that study and found the max occupancy or max utilization about 83% on weekday, a little bit lower on the weekend. And, you know, as you might expect, it fluctuates hourly quite a bit. And during the overnight hours when those meters aren't running is when we see the periods of highest usage. Oh, I'm sorry. The pedestrian network is actually fairly good in this area in terms of its walkability. What's maybe a little bit of a mixed bag is the actual sidewalk design and the widths, which we touched on a bit earlier. But the walk scores in this area are quite good. The bicycle network is similarly a bit of a mixed bag. Immediately adjacent to the site, there's really no bicycle infrastructure at the moment. Bicyclists could ride on the street. And in fact, I think we saw maybe one on the walking tour earlier, but it's, you know, not a lot of infrastructure there for cyclists. A little bit better once you get up into more urbanized, you know, commercial area of Shirlington. And you can see that the site is bordered by several bike share stations. In terms of transit, the site's actually very transit rich. It's only about a block or so from the Shirlington transit station. There are 2 stops directly on site and then many more within easy walking distance. Our transportation team conducted a multimodal transportation assessment. We looked at 6 different intersections around the site, and that's what you see up here in the slide. We found that the net add of traffic in the peak hours was 16 morning trips and 21 afternoon trips. We found that the transportation network is generally adequate to service that additional demand. And to further mitigate the vehicular traffic impacts, as Sergio mentioned, the project will be participating in a transportation management program. Okay, switching gears to open space. Then here's our rendered planting and open space plan. And I'll start left to right. As you know, we've focused a lot on this corner here, and by narrowing that vehicular entrance creates a lot of new opportunities at this corner. So we're showing some additional planting on this side of that entrance, as well as here in this curb bump out area. I think I neglected to mention earlier, but we're actually adding a new ramp and sidewalk directly from the public sidewalk into the site. And for anyone who's on the walking tour and experienced that, I don't even think you could call it a sidewalk. That's too generous, right? It's 18 inches of pavers, right? So that's clearly not a great condition today, but one that will be upgraded in the future. But it also gives us space to pop in some new planting and some new trees here in this curb bump out zone. Of course, we're introducing standard landscape pits with new street trees along 31st Street. We have those 2 landscape pocket areas here, one between the liner units, one between the liner units and the multifamily building. We have some new greenery up actually on the parking deck. It's maybe not as easy to see in site plan here, but we'll show you a rendering in a few moments, just to try and green up the deck where we can and to provide a little bit of buffering from parking deck elevation as you look at new townhouses. The multifamily building has most of its private amenities sort of tucked in the elbow here and then behind the building, but you've got a variety of new plantings and new amenities and actual outdoor kitchenette area here to serve new residents. This is the other landscape pocket. I showed you the other one between the liner buildings earlier, more for the screen wall purposes, but this one shows the relationship between the liner unit here and the multifamily building here. And again, the emphasis on these pockets is to make them a little more lush, focus on native plantings, pollinator plants, make them look attractive, and do the best we can to screen the garage versus what's today just sort of a lawn area with some, sort of more minimal landscaping. This is a view now standing up on the parking deck. This is almost as if you're at the front door of the existing building looking out towards 31st Street. You can see some of the existing mature trees that are up on that level. And then you can see the new planter boxes that have been popped in along the frame of the parking garage, just with some ornamental and decorative plantings just to better screen those new liner units. Pardon. Also a view from the top of the parking deck looking towards the liner units with that new screening added. In terms of green building and sustainability, of course, as staff mentioned, this project will participate in the Green Building Incentive Program, and that means LEED Gold certification for both the multifamily building and the liner units. I understand that there's actually two different rating systems that are going to apply because it's different product types, but both LEED Gold. One thing that we mentioned on the walking tour is looking to incorporate some noise attenuation, either through passive design or materiality, because with the proximity to the interstate, it is a little bit of a noisier part of the neighborhood. Looking at air quality filtration, some of quality of life, design aspects for the new building, biophilic design, pedestrian-oriented design. Talked a little bit about that with the landscape pockets and the emphasis on native plants. EV charging, absolutely, that's a requirement of the green building program. And fortunately, there's already some infrastructure in place that be leveraged and built upon. And then finally, Energy Star certification. And that can consist of many things, but typically it's high energy efficiency appliances, high efficiency plumbing and fixtures, things like that. So this is not an exhaustive list. A lot more design goes into the process as we get into these green building certifications, but this is kind of the menu we know that we're drawing upon. Lastly, with community benefits, some of these have already been covered, but you have sort of two buckets of benefits with these projects. You have kind of your standard and your bonus. Standard benefits include the upgraded sidewalk with 6 foot clear, street trees, etc. Utility upgrades along 31st Street, other site upgrades around the property, contributions to the utility undergrounding fund, public art fund, the transportation management plan to help mitigate traffic impacts for those who do use cars and live in the building. Provision of an in-building emergency wireless network. That's something that first responders require in all these new buildings. And then the upgrades to the bus stops. The bonus, bonus density benefits, the things that we're doing to really earn the density for these new buildings include the green building certification, which we just discussed, and the on-site affordable dwelling units. As Peter mentioned, we don't have the final number, the final mix nailed down just yet, but we know that these units are going to be located in the new building as opposed to the old building. And that's just kind of a little quirk of the financing that's in place for the existing building. So thank you all very much. I know we threw a ton of information at you this evening, but again, happy to answer your questions. And I was remiss, I neglected to mention for anyone who's interested in the architecture, we have a materials board behind us. So maybe after the meeting, if anyone wants to take a look at that.
Thank you. So on that note, before we proceed to clarifying questions, I did want to recognize Commissioner.
Sure, I will introduce myself since I shut up late. I'm Eric Berkey, a member of the Planning Commission.
So on that note, let's go ahead and clarifying questions, Jim.
Yeah, for transportation and parking. Thank you for the statistics on how many spaces are being utilized now. I take it that all the cost of parking is separate from the cost of rent, that if you rent a unit, you have to affirmatively then rent space in the parking lot.
That's correct.
Okay,
Yeah.
good. given that people are complaining about losing spaces on 31st Street, it presumably would be people in the apartment building who don't want to pay and are trying to park out there, or in Park Shirlington, or down in, at the Citizen, that they don't want to have to pay and just want to park. So there's plenty of parking in your building that if anybody wanted it, they could get it immediately. They could get two, they could get three.
That's correct.
Okay, so I'm not as concerned about losing spaces on 31st Street as it was before, because there is parking available. And county policy is you have to pay for parking. Parking on the street isn't a right. I don't have a problem with losing spaces along 31st Street.
Melissa, clarifying question.
Yes, first of all, thank you for applying for the Green Building Program. It's great. LEED Gold, affordable housing, that's all awesome. I had a question on how many EV chargers are on the property or will be EV ready?
I think we have four existing, there's four. No, completely unrelated to the proposed. And I don't actually, I believe the green building standard is 4% for projects that are going through the process to get certified. And then that's the actual stations. And I believe it's 15%, pre-wired or, EV ready.
EV ready.
Right.
That's correct.
Yeah.
I have a couple other quick ones. I have a lot of questions on electrification. Is that this point, your presentation is over, correct?
Yes.
Okay, great. Just double checking. So looking at, I'm curious about energy efficiency gains and is the HVAC unit I saw in some of your paperwork is potentially being gas fired, or if you had looked into heat pumps at all?
AGD team, do we have?
We don't have the details.
I'm not sure if we're far enough along in design to have systems in place.
It's like Jen.
Yeah, are you done? Yep. Okay, great. Jennifer, go ahead.
Hi, just a couple clarifying questions on the caps. Just so I'm clarifying, all new committed affordable housing will be in the multi-level structure and not in those duplexes. Is that right?
I would say TBD. I think at the moment we're contemplating primarily in that multifamily building, but we don't have a final.
Okay. And is the Housing Commission going to provide guidance on that and also put priorities on the larger units for CAFs? Because the largest demand right now is for the 2 to 3 bedroom and not studio in that respect. So I don't know what that process is in terms of prioritizing, but I'm assuming that will be a conversation that will happen sooner than later.
Yeah. I can answer that as Peter Schultz says staff. Yes, staff always we try to get as many family size as we can because we know that that's, the part of our goals for housing. It will be reviewed by the Housing Commission, but by then the affordable housing package should generally be worked out between the developer would have, but the Housing Commission would definitely provide feedback on it. Like I said, we will, as part of our negotiations, ask for, try to have family size units. Yeah.
Yeah, just because looking at the scalability, it looks like 18 3-bedroom are coming online, but I'm going to look back at my notes, but several 228 1-bedroom and 130 maybe studio. But I would not want to see that be mostly committed affordable house. As long as there's a variety, that would, I think, make me or our civic association happy, because that's what we want to see too.
Any other clarifying questions? Pam?
Kudo. Have you thought about where you're going to do Kudo for picking up people, dropping off people, and small goods, both for the apartment building and for the liner buildings?
So we don't have any dedicated Kudo spaces shown in the design at the moment. There's just not enough curb space to allow a lay-by to be built into the design without interrupting that bike lane. So there is I know there's portico, the existing building, and some short-term parking spaces up on the deck for anyone who want to utilize those. There's also the metered parking on the other side of 31st Street that could potentially be used on just a short-term basis.
It would be especially helpful if you could figure out something for the big equipment building.
Mhm.
Maybe a bit of the alley access.
Yeah,
It's a huge issue with building. Everybody got used to delivery.
right. It's a good comment. We'll definitely look at it. I will say the alley, this is something we mentioned on the walking tour. There is an alley right adjacent to the new multifamily building. It's not within the property boundary. We don't have an easement to use it. So I don't know that that would be something we could look at for a solution, but we can think more about it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
David, and then Eric.
The slides have shown the triangular space across 31st Street, but you didn't speak to it. I just wonder if you have any thoughts about what that might be or not be, what relevance it has to the rest of the development. It looks like it's a half acre or something.
Yeah, it's not very large. It's actually not developable because this goes back to the variance that was approved in the 80s. There was basically a restriction put on that triangle to say the density is moving across the street to the buildings, and therefore you really can't do much with it.
Right.
So it will just stay undeveloped.
But it's an open space with trees.
Mm-hmm.
So, and you have a crosswalk right there. So have you thought of that as a park or something? You should clear out the invasives. Use it for something? I don't know. I'm just wondering.
Yeah, that's a good question. It's not been part of our programming at the moment, but it's a good comment and one that we can take back and think about.
Maybe a bike station there or something. The bike lane, so the proposal is a 5-foot bike lane, and that would be on the north side of 31st Street, right? And then, may have covered this, apologies if you have. Is there any protection, or are we just talking about a line and then the travel lane?
So seeing no other clarifying questions, we will go right into parking and loading and transportation. Discussion, questions, concerns?
Yeah. On my notes now. I'll find it, but one is top of mind. So I'm thinking of the surface parking. Is there, I guess my general question is like, it's a big surface lot, not, casting aspersions, but it's a big lot. Is there any thought to how folks may traverse that? Because I was looking at that very wide entrance kind of on the top side. And so was very happy to hear, I was looking at it and then you started talking about the narrowing of it. And I thought, okay, that's great. That's exactly what I think we should do. But then obviously the new sidewalk will just kind of end. Is there any thought to how folks may traverse that open lot? Because I think we want to encourage them to walk onto 31st. There's the transit station, right? There's Shirlington. Shirlington's walkable, could be more walkable, right? They kind of want to get people to walk down the street. Is there any thought on how folks can safely make it across that lot to maybe get to a bus stop to go to work, or etc.? Like maybe a crosswalk or something. So that's, I'll suggest it. Like if you paint some lines in, something.
Yeah, we can even look at painting a path in the current.
Like that seems like a pretty low cost. Yeah, just something to like be a little bit more deliberate about. Like we intend for pedestrians to.
And I would say we've had some very recent and preliminary discussion about that. And I think the thing that we also need to get a better handle on is probably the amount of traffic that flows out the southeast corner of the building versus pedestrians coming down southwest side, which might kind of inform what you do.
Right, where are folks actually going to be walking? Where are they walking now? Maybe this is less of a concern, or maybe it's going to be more of a concern once you do this. So, okay, that's great. I'll throw it back to you.
Any other Comments, questions, concerns about parking and loading and transportation? Good. Seeing none, let's go on now to open space and landscaping.
I do have, and you mentioned some of this is fairly preliminary. You haven't had a fully developed plan, so that's great. So I'll just take these as some thoughts about what you might consider. Number one, from a sustainability point of view, heat island is a big issue on your property. Most of it isn't going to be affected by this development because it's the parking lot in the main building. But I think that there are some things you could do to help reduce that a little bit, at least keep some people from having to park in the sun as much as they do. The other thing, of course, for the liner units in particular is the highway itself. That's the one value of the triangular space and making it healthy and taking the ivy out, taking other invasives out and letting it thrive, is that it will shade some parts of the times of the day and make those units much more pleasant and much less exposed visually, probably in terms of odors and perhaps in terms of sun. So that's number one. Second, related to that is, given the space constraints, I urge you to be really, talk to the county foresters. The 5 feet is not a whole lot for significant trees, but you can connect the tree pits linearly. So the trees talk to each other, share nutrients, and they'll all thrive better. Whatever species end up being, whatever variety of species might end up being, the most viable for that limited space. Another thing is there's a tendency really in smaller areas, and it's totally logical, to have small trees because the planting area is relatively small. But if you're thinking in terms of, this development has been around for 70 years. So if you think in terms of longer periods of time, you could have a pretty majestic canopy tree in those openings between the liner units. Keep it out a little toward the sidewalk so that you don't have to trim too much. There might be other ways with vegetation. I mean, I like the idea that Jim suggested about vines on the walls behind it, and there might be a way you could do some vertical patterning with some other for the ventilation, combining it with the design that you have. It depends on what species, of course, you have. But if you had, a couple feet wide of trumpet honeysuckle, then your tenants will have hummingbirds all over the place. Kinds of butterflies. So that's biophilia. So yeah, the choices about plantings really make a difference. And those spaces, just look really creatively at what's possible with those spaces. In terms of, don't go with the traditional home developer landscaping in the suburbs where it's got some arborvitae and some grass and that's it. That's totally not the right way to go. Then I had one more thing here. Oh yeah, and the upper, then on the actual surface parking behind the liner units, that I know this is just to fill in the slide illustration, but one small evergreen with some other stuff isn't going to help the people in those units, nor the people who might want to park there. If you plant something, that half of them would have a little more shade to park in. So you've got excess parking, and the least favorable parking is out there way away from the main building, and where you have to walk across acres of tarmac and right to the edge. So you could do something really creative with the edge, with a significant amount of soil volume to create a better barrier to provide more privacy for the upper floors of those new units, and also do something for the people who use the surface parking themselves. Anyway, just some suggestions. I think it's you know, it's a good use of the space you have, and I think you can just make it way better just when you get a chance to think about how to integrate it into the space in the most myophilic way. So.
Thank you.
Thank you. I have a comment on the trees unless anybody else does. Okay. On the walking tour, and thank you for doing that. It was very helpful. Along 31st, where the liners will go, I did see a really magnificent old cherry tree there. And I mean, it's very old and it's beautiful. And I know it's probably going to get killed, which I get it. But I will say there was another development. It was 11th in Vermont, and there were some beautiful cherry trees there. And to this day, one of the residents comes to me and specifically says, you know, they came and they tore them down in the spring, and the mother birds were flying around frantically because of the babies in the nest. So I don't know when you're going to do this, but if you do things in the spring, could you please consult somebody who does like animal welfare or whatever? There are certain birds that are protected. You can't touch the nests. So so that no one else is traumatized by this, and so that we're nice with Mother Nature. If you could just kind of put that note in that, you know, we don't want to have that happen during that time. So thank you. All right. So unless there's any other questions on that, green building and, oh, I'm sorry, Pam.
I'll put it under landscape because I don't know where to put it. Can you pull up one of your slides that show the parking lot with a very lovely landscaping and show the back of the linear building?
Yes. Give me a moment.
There's 2 slides. Yep. Yep. I was surprised when I saw these slides online that the linear buildings are so tall. I had no idea that they would be this far above the parking lot. If you're going to keep them this way, can you please make them more attractive and more green? And I have a suggestion, which I'm sure you will probably ignore. If you want to try to lower them, make the first floor of the linear buildings 1 floor. And they could be fully accessible, which you can't do with 2 floors, which would be really, really attractive to people. And people on the 2nd floor would only have to go up 1 floor to get into their apartment. And you would improve the view here a lot. So that is just my suggestion. But if you're going to keep it this way, please make it more interesting and greener and more attractive. Maybe a green roof with plants around it. Looks not very well. Thank you.
Dan, is there anything you want to add about the vision for the landscape boxes along the back of the parking lot? I know this is just somewhat conceptual to show you what we're thinking, but certainly not a finished product.
Yeah, we looked at doing things like trees. The problem is we had at that, there's 2 bays of parking in that garage that's below. We almost have to rebuild the entire garage to support a significant amount of soil volume. So the idea was to have planters that raise that green above kind of, you know, the median height of a car so you can actually see it. We didn't want to plant something low, and we actually have the air conditioning units that are actually down below that are kind of get hidden by all that. And then what you see is we try to get landscape up. Those are not really like trees, they're kind of like large shrubs, but it's something we can support in the planters that are there that we can actually support on the garage. So we're trying to get that, you know, the kind of that green, and there's that other slide that kind of shows it more in a line, but you get, you know, kind of a collapsing of landscape. We're adding a little bit of landscape in front of the new parking that's being proposed on the deck in there. And, you know, we purposely showed early morning, late afternoon to get a little sun on these, but they're going to be in shade, a lot of that. So a lot of the planting that's there needs to cope with the shade from being on the north side of those liner buildings. So, you know, we're trying to do the most we possibly can. What's kind of nice is you peek out and they're actually, when you're on the deck, you don't know that 395 is there. You think that there's just trees kind of across it. It looks like a big gap. You can't see trees in the distance. So we tried to, you know, kind of balance that and, you know, give the parking lot as much of a green feel as we could with the amount of weight we could actually put on it. It's always tricky to do these things, but the amount of soil that you need to really support trees is really significant. And kind of to your point about the trees down on 31st Street, the whole sidewalk is being held up with little pedestals of compacted soil that allow tree soil to go under most of that sidewalk. So actually, the whole streetscape is almost one big soil panel. We're connecting that to those kind of gardens we have on the hillside.
Just to follow up on your point about the deck, have you looked at soil volume requirements for native understory trees like red buds and azaleas and that kind of thing, where you don't need that much and you get the height out of it to screen the back of the liner units a little better, that kind of thing?
Yeah, a lot of even the small trees, like 300 cubic feet, kind of would like to have more soil. These are small enough, we're not counting them towards any kind of credits. There really are kind of planters. We're trying to get as much as we can without overburdening the existing garage. The existing garage is wider, the parking spaces are wider. So we're able to kind of narrow that space in front of the cars. And, you know, we kind of worked with the architects and, you know, the design team to fit as much as we could in there.
Yeah, understory trees, to your point about the shade buildings, they're understory trees. They're supposed to grow under the canopy so they don't have the requirements for sun that the bigger trees have. And so I think they would do just fine. Yeah, there's probably a dozen species that you could take a look at, and they certainly don't need the kind of volume that a canopy tree needs. So
that's a good point. Even if we can't count them technically, I think that's a good way to.
Yeah.
There's not a lot of soil volume, and yeah, we would get comments on our landscape plans, and we tried to count them, so they are.
Well, they'll count to the residents.
That's exactly.
That's what I was gonna follow up. Before we go to Jennifer, I've never been up on the grounds of your place today. I was very struck by what a lovely setting it is. And I would think with anything that you're trying to add to that, you only want to further that. So I would give him a call after the meeting and try to get some more ideas. It's free. And he's got great ideas. So, Jennifer, you had a comment or question?
I just had a question, and I don't know if this is the right place. Is there existing lighting for pedestrian safety to get from the vehicles to the residents? And how would that, and if there isn't, that's fine. But I was trying to, is there a balance between lighting for safety reasons versus lighting that might be intrusive on any of those new units that are being developed? This has come up in the Park Shirlington redevelopment. That's why I'm asking.
There is existing site lighting up there. I couldn't tell you much about the characteristics. We can certainly take a look at that.
Okay, I guess it's, if there's a new unit going up, would the lights go into their living room, you know, from that second duplex story? That would be a question that I have.
Yeah, it's a good question. Thank you. I think that the lighting today is, I think, in the center of the parking lot. So it's a little ways away from where the lighting units are proposed, but it's certainly something that bears looking at.
Yeah, and then I guess for that new pathway, would new lighting be added for pedestrian safety access, or what would that look like?
I think we probably don't know the answer to that question yet. I mean, that's a relatively new concept that we've introduced, but certainly make sure that it's well lit.
Okay, Thanks.
It's something.
Yeah, just to pick up on this theme, under the Green Building Incentive Program, one of the ways you get credit is to comply with the International Dark Sky Standards. And I would highly recommend that from the point of view of the health of the residents, the, safety and security, because of, by doing that, you're avoiding the glare that can cause accidents and cause people to have blind spots. And if it fits in terms of the way you would work that out with the new development, I would recommend taking a look at doing that with the whole parking lot. Make it a package deal, because that would be a big improvement for everybody who lives there. And it's a lot less expensive.
The hits just keep on coming. Okay, so let's see here. Green building and sustainability.
My only comment there would just be to encourage, as much electric, maybe making these buildings all electric, have a chance to, reduce the embodied carbon from day one as much as possible, will also help your GVIP score. As you guys know, and also encourage you to look at heat pumps when you guys get to that point, which is in the future. But yeah, otherwise, thank you.
Anything else on green building and sustainability? And last but not least, site features and amenities. Yeah.
Are any of the various amenities for any of the buildings available to all of the residents, or are they just specifically designed for the benefit of that building?
That's a programming question. The amenity courtyard tucked into the elbow of the multifamily building.
I think that any of this is subject to change when we get into it in a little more detail, but I think the working premise is that there would be some limited amenities in the small the line units essentially won't really have amenities. They're townhouses. The multifamily building would have some limited amenities, primarily lobby, living room area, and what I call a satellite fitness center. I think the expectation is that pretty much everyone sort of on campus, if you will, would have access to the larger amenities in the existing building.
Your existing building has a really nice playground in back of it,
It has a very, very nice
and
backyard.
any resident will be able to use that.
Yes.
The kids.
Yep.
Good.
Well, if no one else is going to ask, I'm going to ask it. So thank you for making sure that you have, before you get to the commissions, negotiated because you are going to be asked heavily about on-site affordability, as you know.
Yep.
Also, I'm not sure if it's appropriate here, but I'm going to ask it anyway. Are pets allowed in these buildings?
Well, yes, in the existing, definitely, and that's our typical policy across the portfolio.
So I guess maybe I missed it. Where's the pet relief area? Where do they go?
Well, I know there is one kind of on the, I guess that would be basically the northwest corner of the building in the back. There's a fenced play run, and pretty sure there's an indoor dog wash station in the existing building.
Okay. But like relief area, there's areas and well marked and all that.
Yes. Yeah.
Okay, very good. And last but not least, it's not part of this topic, but for construction, can you just make sure beyond what you have to do, the folks who are doing construction have never sat through any of these meetings. They don't hear any about this stuff. So whatever we end up with at the end of this, will you please make sure that it is communicated very clearly to the folks who will be on the ground with people walking by and cars going by and, bicyclists and everything else, so that it gets delivered in the manner that we would all want it to be. So thank you. So not seeing any more people to comment on that, I guess we will go to public comment. And given the time, can we give them 3 minutes?
Yep.
We could give you 3 minutes. Okay.
That's per public comment person. And my colleague Emma will call upon you in the order that you signed up, and she'll allow you to unmute, turn on your cameras at that point. So do we have our first?
It's Dr. Byrne.
All right, Mr. Byrne, you're able to, I think you should be able to unmute. And if you're having problems in the chat, Emma had dropped the phone number in there that you could call in.
Making sure that they've got access to speak, and they do.
Stand by just a second.
Oops, it was my camera. So first up, we've got Bernie Byrne, if you are ready.
Dr. Byrne, are you ready?
And if not, we could come back to him.
Yeah. Left. Dr. Byrne? No? Okay, so let's go on to Patty Shen.
Hi, I don't know, can you guys see me? No.
We can hear you.
We can hear
can't
you.
see you.
Okay, I don't know. Do you guys enable my camera? I don't think I have it off.
You should have the permission, but we can hear you.
Hold on, apply, sorry, let me hit. Well, if you can hear me, I'm trying to get my camera up because I am a real person, but.
We'll take your word.
I don't know. It says non-standard blur preview, and it just looks black. I don't know what I did.
Yeah.
Oh,
So
wait,
can hear
I-
That's okay. We can hear you.
Yeah,
Can you
go
see
ahead.
me now?
No.
Oh, yeah, apply and turn on video. Wait a minute. I think I just did it. I think you should, there I am.
Yeah.
Oh, there you go.
Now we, yep.
Okay, 3 minutes. Okay, so let me just say real quick, I've been a resident for about almost 20 years, so I know the area pretty well. So I have a lot of comment, but I'll just first say about the narrowing. I invite all of the county, all you guys sitting on the board, to go into Shirlington House and pull out to take the left onto 31st Street. So the area that you guys are planning to put all the family housing, the idea of the beautiful native trees, all of that sounds great. But right now, when you pull out to take the left, everybody has to like inch up to be able to view to get on to 31st Street, notwithstanding the traffic coming down the hill. That's the reason why we had to put speed bumps down there, because it was treacherous. So when you tell me that you're going to be building all the buildings along that just small stretch of land, all I see is just visibility being blocked, and then the narrowing, and then cars having to inch up even further onto 31st Street, onto the left. So I just want you to be aware of that. The Kwanzaa cherry trees that are there now are barely making it in terms of the visibility. I love them too. They're gorgeous. I've seen white-throated sparrows underneath them hanging around. I know they're not native, but Washington, D.C. loves their cherry trees, and Shirlington House loves their 2 little Kwanzaas there and the 1 cherry tree in the back. So anyway, so just if you're going to pick trees, you're going to have to be extremely wary about what you put on there, because the visibility just to pull out of the apartment is already in danger. So that's that. And then I just want to make aware that there's a Wakefield bus stop at the end of the hill at the bottom where the Citizen is. So you've got kids coming all through Park Shirlington that are walking all the way down the hill on that north side. So construction, what are we talking here? 2 years. So you're going to put some danger with the kids getting down, or you're going to have to talk to Wakefield and figure out where they're going to put the next bus stop. So just be aware of that, please. Affordability, I'm just going to say this because it's just annoying. Putting affordable housing right next to the highway, I just think it's not a good look. That's all. That. And with the dog, so the dogs use that hill. The building just got certified as a bark building. Everybody who lives in that backside of the building is taking their dogs out on that hill. You can't put native planting there because dogs are peeing over everything. what we've got planted now are making it because they're old. They're okay. You put the new stuff in there, vulnerable to urine and the acid, and we've got so many dogs already. I love them. Don't get me wrong. I think it's great. But those are my three big ones. The parking, again, the cost, $175. That's why people park on the side of the street there. And you've got 2 bedrooms just north of $3,000 here. You've got 1 bedrooms just going north of, or sorry, you've got 2 bedrooms south
Yeah.
of, you
Yeah.
get it.
Yes, thank you so much for your comments. We all were making very good notes. Your time is up and we appreciate that. I hope you do follow this project all the way through. Dr. Byrne, have we got you yet? Hello, Dr. Byrne? Is he still online?
I did notice that a phone number joined, so let me just make sure
Okay,
that
hold on
they.
a second. Let's see if maybe that's you on the phone.
So now whoever called in should be able to unmute by pressing *6 on your phone.
Dr.
And I
Byrne,
see that
if
someone's
that's-
unmuted.
Yeah.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes.
Yes, Dr. Byrne, thank you. Go ahead. You got 3 minutes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm having problems with this all at every meeting. This project lacks biophilia and sustainability. There are no green roofs, green walls, or solar panels on any of the project's buildings. Support the County Board's 2016 Monarch Pledge and the 2023 Forestry and Natural Resources Master Plan. All plants should be native to Arlington and its vicinity. Native flowering vines should hang down from the roof, balconies, and ledges, and climb from the ground on trellises. We don't see these. Pollinator plants should replace the project's wide lawn, which appears to cover the parking garage. Protect all plantings from trampling and dogs with low fencing and elevation. Install native pollinator plants rather than grass in all tree trenches. As stated, replace the wide lawn that covers the parking garage with native plants to support pollinators. Replace the following non-native plants with natives: blue zinger, blue sedge, feather reed grass, St. John's wort, Blue Ridge creeping phlox. I sent the applicant a list of these plants. They're not natives, some are invasives, but they're in the plan. The tree list replace the 10 cultivars with their parents if native, or with natives with similar characteristics. You got 10 cultivators there. Pollinators often don't recognize these. The tree list contains Jefferson American elm, although some people believe that Jefferson is resistant or tolerant to Dutch elm disease, DED. Any such tolerance or resistance has not been conclusively demonstrated. The original Jefferson, located on the National Mall, is now dying or dead. Replace Jefferson with New Harmony or Princeton, which performed well in a national elm trial for DED resistance. Wind-pollinated plants such as grass and sedges feed fewer pollinators than pollen plants. You have many grasses and sedges there. Fewer than 25% of herbaceous plants should be wind-pollinated. Reduce that up to 25% of the total number of pollinated plants. Okay, thank you. That's all I have to say.
Thank you, Dr. Byrne. Thank you.
Thank you.
Before we go around the room for the public commenters, will the applicant have some responses or something when we meet you in the various commissions for some of the things that they brought up?
Yeah, no, those are all good comments. Thank you to everyone who provided feedback. We'll certainly look at that, I'll call it the site distance issue, as you're making that exit out of the site driveway. My suspicion is that it was designed in the 60s and not designed particularly well, which might be the source of the problem, and that by redesigning that geometry, it will hopefully get a little easier to navigate, not harder. And certainly, thank you for everyone for comments on biophilia, plant species, considerations for soil depth and volume. Some of those things we work out during permitting in the final landscape plan, but some of the things we can think about now, and there's no harm in getting a jump on thinking about how to make that biophilia as good as we can.
Okay, so before we close tonight, I'm just going to go around the room for any last comments or anything that you want to leave the applicant or goes to the commissions.
Electric, that's it.
Bubble half building.
I think it's a good project. I like the liner, especially the liner units, because right now you're just looking at invasive trees and a parking garage. And this is gonna enliven the street, and it might actually encourage more people to walk from Park Shirlington down to the bus stop and into Shirlington, because it'll be more interesting and it'll feel safe.
Thank you for your presentations. It's really been helpful for me to understand the project better, and I think it's pretty good right now. Great pedestrian stuff.
Eric?
Oh, I agree with my colleagues, especially David's comments. Really appreciated those about the trees and more opportunities to get more housing, especially in Shirlington, and, you know, support economic activity, which supports housing. And I think that's all great. So excited to see what you all present at the commissions. Thanks.
And I would just like to add everything that was said tonight, that I look forward to hearing any additional updates or whatever when it comes in front of us at the commissions. Timelines, anything else? You?
Oh, well, it'll just wait on the applicant to revise their plans, especially showing the changed 31st Street cross-section and any other changes they wish to make based on responses that they've heard. And then once we get that, it's a 45-day review period before scheduling for planning commission.
Yes. And I want to again thank everybody. We were a little ill-fated with our first SPRC, particularly those who joined us again online. And if should there be any comments or anything that anyone else wants to make, you can email those to Peter and or myself, and we will make sure that, you know, they become part of the project. So unless there's anything else, thank you all very much for having a very civil conversation this evening.
Thank you for being a great chair and great.